Welcome into a Wednesday, June 11th edition of Daily Faceoff Live, streaming live on the DFO YouTube. And as always, a presentation of Bet365. Download the app today. Use the code NATION, whatever the moment. It's never ordinary at Bet365. Frank Seravalli. I will go ahead and say, Frank, you're the man of the morning. You got the Chris Kreider deal. You got a fresh trade targets board. You're buzzing. You're buzzing. No Stanley Cup off day for you.
It's been a very busy 24 hours. We had the offer sheet candidates yesterday, followed by the Kreider news, and then trade targets. Busier than a one-legged man in an ass-kicking competition this day.
I like that line. We are going to talk about your latest trade targets board in our big segment today. We got another NHL award to discuss. We got an offseason preview. We have a trade with Chris Kreider potentially being on the move to the Ducks. But let's start with just a quick little Stanley Cup final topic here, Frank. Oilers head coach Chris Knoblauch speaking to the media this morning in Florida. And listen, all's kind of quiet. The Oilers weren't having a practice today, but Knoblauch did share a little bit of information saying the coaching staff is contemplating one lineup change ahead of Game 4. I would assume that one lineup change would be Troy Stecher in for John Klingberg. Do you have a different opinion on what it might be?
No, that's the move I would make, but I'd also start Cal Pickard over Stuart Skinner. I think this is their only opportunity to make a change if they want to. If you lose Game 4 and you go back to Edmonton 3-1, you're not putting Cal Pickard in for an elimination game with Florida's chance to win the Cup. I think we've seen it proven time and time again that Stuart Skinner finds the reset to be valuable. I thought he was overamped, overhyped, out of position in Game 3 in Florida. It's demonstrable how much more calm Cal Pickard is, plus how much more calm the Oilers play in front of Cal Pickard. So goaltending change, 1. And 2, I don't think John Klingberg has given you a lot in this series. So with that, bring Troy Stecher back in, get him back playing with Darnell Nurse, have him be the guy that's the whisperer, and then rejig your pairings from there. But doesn't need to be drastic. This isn't a panic move. It's just that I think those two changes put the Edmonton Oilers in the best position to succeed for Game 4 and get back to level ground. And then if you want to, depending on how the game goes, go back to Skinner for Game 5.
Yeah, so I talked about that yesterday, obviously, on Oilers Nation every day, and I kind of had a similar point to you. Like, I don't think there's actually a wrong decision for Chris Knoblauch, because I think whichever way you go, it's very, very justified. You can point to, like you said, the fact that this is your last chance to go to Calvin Pickard. And if you think Stuart Skinner has given you his peak, and he gave you peak for, let's call it 3 weeks, if you think you're getting a decline now, you can't take that chance in Game 4. On the other hand, you can sit there and go, the later a series gets, Stuart Skinner always gets better.
Yeah, I mean, what if people called him Mr. Game 4? I mean, his numbers are impeccable in those games, and that's great. But I just didn't like a lot of the body language and positioning that we saw from him in Game 3. Can he clean it up? Of course he can. Can he be better? He's proven that he can bounce back. I just think what this team needs is more calm, and they definitely get more calm with Pickard in net as opposed to Skinner.
Yeah, and that was a big part of that Game 3 loss for the Oilers, running around a little bit, maybe a little too over-energized. Forward group, I would expect to stay the same for Edmonton. And from the Florida perspective, I mean, you're not messing with a good thing in Florida. They got A.J. Greer back for Game 3. He was a pain in the Oilers behind. There's no reason to mess with anything if you're Paul Maurice. You're living good.
Yeah, no, they're feeling real good about their situation, and understandably so. But I think this last game was a reminder of how quickly things can swing. If you've got the Oilers level ground 2-2 with the best of 3 remaining and 2 games on home ice, if you're Edmonton, I think you're feeling real good about that coming back home. So it happens fast in a series, and the Oilers, this is it. This is a must-win Game 4. You don't win, there's a real good chance you're not winning the Cup.
Yeah. Last year, we got 2 trades during the Stanley Cup final that were of significance. And last night, Frank, you were all over the story that the Anaheim Ducks and New York Rangers are far down the path on a Chris Kreider trade. You even got as far as the potential return being Carey Terrence, who is a New York native and a 2023 second-round pick. Is the holdup here, because obviously the deal's not official, is it as simple as once Kreider waves, this deal's done?
Yeah, I think it's a little bit more, it's not complicated, but I think they wanted to directly have a conversation with Chris Kreider, and we're waiting for permission on Wednesday to schedule that call to basically outline for them what their thought process and what their plan is. I was told that this no trade clause isn't expected to be an issue. If it's not Anaheim, then there's 16 other teams that he can be sent to because he has a 15 team no trade. And with that, he has some measure of control here to decide that that's the place that he wants to be. He's got familiarity with not just Jacob Trouba, the guy who was coincidentally linked to him in the memo that was sent league wide back in November that ended up derailing the New York Rangers season, but also knows Ryan Strome. And I was told that he has a curiosity or an interest in playing for Joel Quenneville as well. So I don't expect it to be a hiccup. I don't expect any roadblocks. I think it was really just a matter of getting to this point. The Rangers had been talking to a few other teams. The Anaheim Ducks had a few other files that they were working on. But I think this conversation has been ongoing for the last couple weeks or so. Nothing new and not a surprise to Kreider, who was kept well abreast of the situation behind the scenes. And yeah, let's see where this goes today. I think they've got the framework in place and what it would look like. It's just a matter of Kreider saying yes and getting it over the finish line.
The 34-year-old Chris Kreider has 2 more years left on his deal with a cap hit of $6.5 million. And I think for the Rangers, it's fair to say, considering what the return is, a guy who was a second-round pick a couple years ago, the point is they're getting out of his money, though, right, Frank? And it really does change the way you'd view their offseason picture, going from $8.5 million in cap space to $15 million in cap space.
It's a big change, and I think there's other big changes on the way. Andre Miller is a guy who is prominently featured on our trade targets board. I think in a perfect world, they would have also found a way to move out Mika Zibanejad, but he has the full no trade, and I don't think that's going to be going anywhere. Although Chris Drury has shown here with 3 different players now, if this Kreider trade goes through, Kreider, Trouba, and Barclay Goodrow, that it's only a matter of time. If they want to move on from you, they'll make it happen at some point. So it's a definite turnover, and I think it's the end of an era. This is a guy in Chris Kreider who is an all-time New York Ranger. He has certainly put himself in the conversation to ultimately have his number retired. That's how good he's been for the 98-year-old New York Rangers. He's 3rd all-time in goals. He's only 10 back of Jean Rattel, who is in the Hockey Hall of Fame in a very similar number of games played. He's 1st all-time in playoff goals. 1st all-time in power play goals. This is a guy who is a gifted goal scorer that fell on hard times last season for a variety of reasons. The memo being one, vertigo that he dealt with. He had a mangled hand at one point. And he still got 20 goals. I view Chris Kreider as a guy who's a very solid bounce back candidate. And if you're the Ducks and you've got piles of cash here, you've got tons of cap space that you otherwise wouldn't be spending, getting Chris Kreider essentially for free or free 99, depending on how you think about it, and plugging him into your lineup for the next 2 years as that bounce back candidate who isn't going to be taking away long-term cap space or roster spots from guys that you want to see continue to progress. He's going to provide the support that you need if you're Anaheim, plus a nice bit of FU that he has in his game. Like, he's got the dog in him that I think that Anaheim team needs to be a tougher team to play against. So I really like every aspect of this deal. And to be honest, from both sides, the Rangers get flexibility that they really craved and needed. They're changing over their roster, and the Ducks get someone who's very useful and a strong bounce back.
Yeah, help on the power play, all that stuff. I think this is one of those deals that just makes so much sense. The Ducks, even after bringing in Chris Kreider's $6.5 million cap hit, are still going to have north of $30 million in cap space, and they basically just have to sign Dostal and McTavish.
Yeah, and there's other big contracts coming along the way. You're going to have to pay Jackson Lacombe at some point, although I don't think that extension gets done this summer. People have said, what about Mitch Marner? Oh, blank check. They're going to give him $14 million. No, they're not. They're interested in Mitch Marner, but only to a certain extent. There's going to be a cap and a limit to that because they know that they're going to need to pay these guys. I think this Ducks team is on an upward trajectory. I think you're seeing the immediate impact of Joel Quenneville to be able to help lure in a player like Chris Kreider. And look, this is a big change. And people have said, why are the why on earth are the Ducks taking on $16 million off the New York Rangers' hands for basically next to nothing? Why don't the Rangers have to attach a pick to it? Well, the Rangers must have an inkling somewhere else that they could dump Chris Kreider essentially for free. So then it becomes, do you want to be the team that does it? And if you're getting good players in return, by the way, the Rangers and Ducks had the same record essentially after the Trouba trade last year. He made the Ducks better last year. Kreider's going to make them even more so.
Let's keep cruising along here with the show, Frank. We got another NHL award announced today as Cale Makar captured his second career Norris. He becomes the 14th multi-Norris winner in NHL history, and he grabbed 176 first-place votes. They did a little video of his buddy surprising him on a golf course, and yes, Cale Makar did the whole, wow, oh my God. There was no surprise here. This was Cale Makar's award basically from Jump Street this year.
Well, not from Jump Street, because Quinn Hughes didn't get hurt really until December. So I would say that is not totally accurate, but Cale Makar is always in the running. I mean, that's the truth. Cale Makar would have been in the running last year had he not missed 20 games. This is a guy that when I was at the first time he was awarded the Norris Trophy, it was at the NHL Awards in Nashville, and I can remember him accepting it. I'm thinking to myself, who the heck is going to take this trophy off this guy over the next 10-year period of time? Obviously, we saw with Hughes, Carlson won with a surprise 100-point season. But other than that, this guy is the present and the future of the NHL. And so not a shock, 176 out of 191 first-place votes. Zach Werenski had an unbelievable season, definitely a career year for him, a guy that helped lift the Columbus Blue Jackets when they really needed it. 132 second-place votes out of 191, and well-respected in his candidacy, but Cale Makar well north of a point per game, and it's not as if his game lacks on the defensive end. He's got the puck on his stick so much. I'm a subscriber to the belief of, and his skating is so elite, he's never out of position. I'm a subscriber to the belief of the best defense is a good offense.
Yeah. Oh, and in today's NHL, like just moving the puck is the most important part of playing defense, right? You need to get it away from your net so the other team can't score in it. Anyways, Frank, Makar, Hughes, it feels like they could go the next 10 years, as you kind of alluded to, just alternating, flip-flop, back and forth. But when you look at the other guys who got votes this year, who's sort of the one name you look at and go, you know what? They might be able to buck the trend one day. With a great season, could a Dahlin, Harley, does Jacob Slavin eventually have a year where everyone goes, man, he's just so good defensively? Like, is there anyone on this list of guys who got votes who you think could win it one day?
I think Lane Hudson will be entering the chat. I think Jacob Slavin, if you want to award the Norris on a different basis of being the best all-around defenseman, is certainly in that category. Werenski could continue to challenge, but one guy that didn't get any votes this year, and in part due to injury, is Miro Heiskanen in Dallas. He's someone that if he can find the upper echelon of a point total, that I think Miro Heiskanen can win one or multiple Norris trophies because he's that good as an all-around player. So the offense, he's sort of been kind of capped out at like high 50s, low 60s in points. Makar's at 92. It's a gap to close for sure, but if he can add that or find that to his game, or has a power play that takes off like a rocket ship in Dallas, look out, because Heiskanen could be in that category for sure.
So from Makar winning the Norris, it ties in nicely to our offseason preview today, which is all about the Colorado Avalanche. Frank, they made the splash last week signing Brock Nelson, and it basically took up all the cap space they had. They have the least amount of cap space in the NHL right now at just $1.2 million. Look at the board we have up here. Not a lot of draft picks, only a 4th and 7th rounder this year. So is it fair to say that Chris McFarland's going to be hitting the trade market to not only free up space, but maybe even recoup some picks?
Yeah, I think there's less of a focus on recouping picks as it is trying to field a roster for next season. They've got their work cut out for them, much like the Dallas Stars making their own bed when they went after Mikko Rantanen, and rightfully so. The Colorado Avalanche are right back at square one. And there's a reason why 3 guys from their team are on our trade board. It could be more. And we'll talk about those in a minute with trade targets specifically. But when you've got the cap space doled out as you see it, 12.6 million to McKinnon. And then your second line center position is Brock Nelson, now locked up at 7.5, as you mentioned, for the next 3 years. That, okay, Charlie Coyle, 3C at 5.25. On most teams, 3C 5.25 is like, you're fine. You're like, okay, cool, no problem. We can live with that because we're really staunch down the middle. The problem is it's a luxury at this moment in time that Colorado probably can't afford. And they've got some real depth issues on their blue line. That third pair was as thin as any in the league this season. And guess what? Things might be getting even more thin because Sam Girard, they've been trying to peddle him for 3 to 4 years now. He's been involved in trade discussions and conversations. So you've got Girard, you've got Coyle, and then, oh yeah, there's the question about Marty Necas. They're in the same position they were last year with Mikko Rantanen that they are with Marty Necas. 1 year away from unrestricted free agency, a talented top-line winger who isn't Mikko Rantanen, by the way. But sources indicate from around the league that if the Avs were to put a $9 million a year contract offer in front of Necas, who was north of a point per game, 83 points in 79 games last year, that might not get it done. So if he's saying no to 9, what's it going to take? And if you're the Avs, you're now entering a contract year. Do you trade him? Do you bite the bullet and sign him? Are they sitting here going, wow, Necas at 9 or 9.5 or whatever it's going to cost us? Are we better off? Were we better off just paying Rantanen the 12 or 12.5 and keeping him and not having all of these different headaches? So they're in one for sure. There's no doubt about that. And for a team that lost in the first round that's supremely talented, they've got a little of this still kind of Toronto Maple Leafs roster build going on from years past, which is a very top-heavy team that's trying to sort out its depth and be a stronger team top to bottom. They took huge strides in doing that last year, but still have a ways to go.
Yeah, I remember we had Jesse Montano on during the year, and he was talking about how a guy like Josh Manson was maybe starting to struggle a little bit and slow down with age. $4.5 million. Miles Wood's always been a guy who you look at 2.5. He plays on their fourth line, and it's like, do you try to get rid of maybe one of those two contracts? Like Girard, Coyle, Necas, like teams will take those guys. You want to get something for them, obviously, but I wonder about maybe like a more pure cap dump in the sense of a Wood or a Manson as well.
Yeah, I mean, if it were me and I were building the team, like if you're looking at trying to check your positional boxes, I don't love the idea of having two kind of undersized guys. And I include Makar in that because let's face it, 5'11-ish. He's not a giant and he doesn't play giant. But you having another one of those guys in Sam Girard, a lot of teams have drawn the hard line and said, look, we're only going to have one undersized defenseman in our 6. We can't have 2. And so as much as Manson has slowed down or struggled, I'm taking his size and compete in the playoffs versus a guy like Sam Girard who has clear and defined skills and upside, but is maybe one of those guys that gets pushed around a bit when it matters most.
Let's keep the trade talk going and get to our big segment for the day. It's another edition of Icebreakers, and it's brought to you by Budweiser. Budweiser is encouraging buds to make time for the playoffs, not excuses. Every goal, every win is better enjoyed with your buds. So phone a bud, text a bud, and call out their excuses for bailing on the playoffs. After all, the playoffs are the most wonderful time of the year. Make them count. When it's springtime, it's go time with Budweiser. All new trade targets board up now at dailyfaceoff.com. Frank, 10 new names on your board. One in the top 10 in Jason Robertson, who I know we've spent a lot of time this week on the rundown on this show talking about Robertson, but he's 7 on your board. As the week's gone on, has your feeling on Robertson changed? Are you willing to say like north of 50% chance he's getting traded now?
No, I think it's a coin flip. I think there's many different ways to skin a cat, and I think the Stars are trying to investigate all of those different options. If I'm the Stars, the first thing I'm trying to do is come up with a plan for the right side of my defense. Cody Ceci, pending UFA, Ilya Lyubushkin, not necessarily an ideal fit, and 2 more years left at 3.25. And then you've got Matt Dumba, who was a healthy scratch all playoffs long and either should be trade fodder or a buyout, either way. You've got $5 million to hand out to 5 different roster spots over the course of this summer to fill out your team. What do you do with Jamie Benn? Are you just shaking hands and saying goodbye to Matt Duchene? I think you try and exhaust or figure out all those options. It's obviously all coming together like a puzzle, but you do that before really managing or dealing with Robertson, because pieces like him are really hard to come by. If you can sort it all out and feel comfortable about your cap situation moving forward to the point where you say, okay, Robertson has 1 year left on his deal. We know that the cap is increasing for the 2 years beyond this next season, and we know what that number is. Are we willing to give Robertson a big chunk of that cap increase and be comfortable with that, knowing that this is a guy who has proven that he can hit 100 points and 40 plus goals, that can be a play driver for our team? So I'm not willing to say north of 50-50. I'd say it's a coin flip. I'd say it depends on what the interest level is like, what the Stars can get back. And then moving forward, what does the rest of the puzzle look like in Dallas?
I'd say we've been flipping through the top 30 here as you gave that answer, Frank. I'm looking at number 29, the rights to Mitch Marner in Toronto. As the weeks have gone on following the Leafs season coming to an end, it's felt more and more like, hey, this thing is not, they're not getting remarried here. It's over. So the idea of trading Marner's rights, would that open up the 8th year for the team acquiring them?
It would, in a sign and trade. And look, this has been, as you might imagine, pretty frosty. I don't think either side at this exact moment in time wants to do the other a favor. And sometimes when you get divorced, it does get ugly at the table. But sometimes cooler heads prevail and the smart move is the right move. And in this case, it depends on how much it's worth to these parties involved to be able to make something like that happen. The benefit for Mitch Marner is really clear. You do a sign and trade. A, you get to jump the market. B, you pick your team ahead of time. You're done and settled. And C, you're able to get the 8th year to either maximize your earning potential or make it a little bit more palatable and comfortable for the team signing you so that maybe you can squeeze out a few extra bucks. And so the 8th year, I think, does matter for the player if you're signing at that magnitude for that long. It's an extra 12, 13, $14 million, whatever the number comes in at. For the Leafs, as much as you might not want to help that process along, if a team is willing to jump the market and it's in their best interest to try and suppress a little bit that AAV, maybe you could squeeze out a late second round pick or something like that if a team has an extra pick, to be able to just facilitate a transaction and have him sign on a piece of paper that someone else does all of the heavy lifting on. I'm not saying it's likely. I'm just saying it's not out of the realm of possibility that something like this materializes over the next 19 days.
Which would, I guess, explain why it's number 29 on your board. Another unique one that's up right now is number 11, and the rights to Isaac Howard, the first-round pick from 2022. Is it safe to say that relationship is also frosty between the Bolts and Howard?
Yeah, it's also over. Isaac Howard is not going to be playing for the Tampa Bay Lightning. I think we've come to that conclusion. The question is, where's he going, and when do the Lightning get it done, and what do they get in return? So I think there's been no shortage of interest in the Hobey Baker Award winner as the top player in college hockey. A very consistent and productive goal scorer, a guy that showed a clutch gene in his game at World Juniors, someone that I think is knocking on the door after his junior year of being a full-time NHL player. It's taken probably a little bit longer. I think Howard probably wanted the Bolts to come at him with a little bit more aggression in order to get him in their lineup and sign and make it happen. They just haven't seemed to be on the same page for a long time now. And the clock's ticking on the Lightning because they have until August 15th, 2026 to sign him, or else he becomes a total unrestricted free agent. If you go into this next regular season and you have him unsigned, well, then teams are looking at it going, why would I give you something? Because I could just wait until next August and get him for free. And he's going, I can then pick whoever I want to sign with, and I don't have to go where you trade me. So it's going to be an interesting thing to see develop. I'm kind of surprised that it's taken this long since the NCAA season has ended. They've had plenty of time to work on this file, but maybe they just haven't found something yet that they feel is commensurate value to the player.
Fair. Again, 31st overall pick back in 2022. Full board up at dailyfaceoff.com. You can read the story there. We'll put the link in the YouTube chat as well. Frank, let's move along, though, to our hashtag AskDFO question, because we got one from, and it's interesting, and it's been actually thrown in our chat a handful of times over the last couple of weeks, and I've just never gotten the chance to ask you about it, from a guy and his dogs. He goes, hashtag AskDFO. Do you think there's a chance the Canadians try to move on from Carey Price's contract to get out of the LTIR space? He's got one more year on it at $10.5 million, obviously not playing hockey again.
I think they'd consider it. I think that they're open to the idea of not operating in LTIR. It's not necessarily ideal. I don't think it has to happen by any stretch of the imagination, but it would potentially make life a little bit easier for their cap situation to not have to do that. So I think it's been something that's been on their radar and they've had cursory conversations about, but nothing to this point that's obviously gotten it done.
And just an important note I wanted to add on that. He has a $5.5 million signing bonus on the last year of that deal, but the base pay for Carey Price in this final year is only $2 million. So the real dollars attached to Price's contract once that signing bonus is paid, not exactly all that high. So
yeah. And one thing I would add too, I believe sources indicated that signing bonus is due in August. So I wouldn't expect anything to materialize before then.
Important note as well. Let's get to our daily bets, brought to you by Bet365. Download the app today. Use the code NATION, an official partner of the Stanley Cup playoffs, and they got you covered from game props, player props, totals, money line. They even have futures bets that are updating after every single game. Frank, I want to dig into a couple of those future bets. I was really impressed with Carter Verhaeghe the other day, and this Florida power play is heating up. He's got 1 goal in the series now. Verhaeghe to get to 3 goals is plus 210. So again, if you think Florida's going to go bing, bing and finish off this series relatively quickly, then the idea that Verhaeghe scores twice, not that far-fetched. Their power play would probably be contributing. If you think this is a long series, then plus 210 on Verhaeghe to score 2 goals in the next, call it 4 games. I don't mind that as well. So Verhaeghe's the one play I like. And then Connor McDavid to get to 25 shots on goal. He's only at 13 right now. It's minus 110, but he has a 7-shot game under his belt already. If you were to do that again, this would obviously provide some really, really good value. And I think, again, if this is going to be if this series has 3-4 more games, the idea that McDavid gets 12 shots, he could do it a lot quicker than that. So McDavid to get to 25 shots, for Verhaeghe to score 3 goals. You were bobbing your head, Frank. I think you like that one. You're agreeing with me.
I like the shots. I don't like the goals. It's just not enough value for me at 210.
All right. We're going to wrap up the show, Frank, with a little bit of garbage time and a story you put out earlier this morning, a couple hours ago. The NHL is monitoring the civil unrest situation, the protests in Los Angeles, because the NHL draft is just 16 days away and it's supposed to be in LA.
Yeah, they're not pressing the panic button just yet, but obviously something that they're keeping a close eye on because there's been a curfew that's been enacted by the mayor in Los Angeles, and Peacock Theater, where the draft is scheduled to be held, and LA Live, where the arena is and everyone's staying in the hotel. They're under curfew they're in that boundary from 8 p.m. to 6 a.m. No one's allowed outside. My understanding is LA has already canceled one significant event in the city out of an abundance of caution. And I think the last thing that anyone wants is flying in 100 top prospects and having them be unable to leave their hotel or to be able to do the event. So certainly not an ideal situation. They're keeping track of it. I think they've got some alternatives in mind, but it's still a bit premature. And maybe, just maybe, it's a little bit of a blessing for the league that this draft is decentralized, that you're not having teams and front offices and media come in from 32 different markets, because as tough as this situation might be to pivot as it is, to do it with 100 prospects and staff and a show is a lot easier than doing it for 32 different franchises. So maybe that will have worked out for them in a very odd and unexpected way.
an interesting story. Again, the decentralized draft this year was a topic when Gary Bettman and Bill Daly were speaking earlier on in the Stanley Cup final. That is a wrap on today's edition of the show. Tomorrow, a Stanley Cup final game day and a little bit more trade talk as well. Keep it locked, dailyfaceoff.com. Frank Seravalli tweet notifications when that Chris Kreider deal gets officially done. You know the man will be all over it. Everybody in the YouTube, great stuff. As always, enjoy your Wednesday. We'll see you right back here tomorrow at noon Eastern. What's up, hockey fans? If you enjoyed that video, then you're going to want to hit the subscribe button to not miss any of our content. From daily live shows with Frank Seravalli to analysis from former NHLers to exclusive interviews with some of the biggest names in the hockey world on Frankly Speaking. You're going to want to hit that subscribe button and stay up to date with everything going on in the hockey world.